Okay, quick word about the assessments. We've got 3 different assessments on this unit. And there's something they all have in common. The thing they have in common is a reliance on critical thinking skills. So what's critical thinking skills? Well, surprise, surprise, I've got a YouTube video all about critical thinking skills. There are also lots of other YouTube videos on critical thinking skills. So have a look through those, but I'll just sum up for you what the critical thinking that we're going to concentrate on this unit is. Was that a sentence? I don't know, was that a sentence? I don't think that was a sentence. Anyway, hopefully you get the gist of what I just said there. Now, there are 2 types of critical thinking. One is kind of sort of the mainstream critical thinking that they promote in education, which is kind of like problem solving, trying to find a problem and then trying to fix the problem. And it's a kind of generic skill. On this unit, we're doing that, but we're doing it in a specific way, which is focusing on social power, which is one of the key themes of our unit. And this type of critical thinking borrows a lot from what's called critical theory. And given critical is in the title of the unit, which is Critical Cultural Social Psychology, critical psychology is an area that borrows a lot from critical theory. We'll talk about that more later on in the unit. So it borrows that form of critical thinking. And what's that form of critical thinking? Well, you can sum it up really with 2 questions. The first question is, who says what about whom? So, for example, who says what about disabled people? Who describes disabled people in that particular way? Who talks about them in that particular way? Okay, so the dominant way that people are talked about in terms of disabled people is in relation to them having a form of impairment. You know, they are impaired. The second question is, in whose interest is it that we speak that way? So in whose interest is it that we talk about disabled people as though they have an impairment? Why don't we talk about disability as something that's gone wrong in society or in the social context? Why don't we talk about disabled people as people who are disabled by an environment that doesn't accommodate for their needs, which is a different way of talking about disability. So why do we talk about disability in one way and not another way in terms of whose interests are being served by us talking about it in a particular way? That's just an introduction to critical thinking. We'll do more of it throughout the unit. Now, the 3 assessments, promised to get onto them, didn't I? So the first assessment is where you do a critical review of a paper, an academic paper that I'm going to give you. The second assessment is where you keep a journal, a learning journal, kind of diary, a logbook, if you like, of your experiences on the unit, in particular in relation to how you respond to some of the content on the unit. This is a weekly diary I'd like you to keep, but I'm only going to ask you to present as your assessment a number of those entries. The third assessment is a kind of traditional essay, which is like boring, you know. Well, maybe it's boring. We don't do these as much as we used to, essay writing, but it's a really important skill. I want you to talk about one of the central topics that we're covering on this unit, which the central topics are disability, mental illness, and sexuality. I'll give you much more detail on those assessments as we go along, particularly as those deadlines approach. If you're not enrolled in the unit, of course, you don't have to sit the assessment, which you might think is glorious, but actually the assessments are the main way that I can give you feedback on your learning from this unit, if that makes sense. So the assessments are actually supposed to be the nice bit, though they don't feel that nice when you're under pressure with a deadline, having to get it done, and so on. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. So that's it for now. A short introduction to the assessments and a short introduction to critical thinking. So till next time, ta-da.